Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and welcome to a special episode here regarding Pro Cycling Manager 2022. Actually, let's rephrase that. It's regarding Pro Cycling Manager 2023. So, this is my feature request video for the upcoming next year, long ways away still as of yet, next edition in the Pro Cycling Manager series. This is my top 10 feature requests. Let's go ahead and get into it. In the meantime, in the background, totally AI controlled, is going to be stage 12 of the Tour de France, at least at the day of release. This is the stage that is happening today. It is the Alpe d'Huez stage. Yesterday was pretty epic as it got down to ones and twos over the Galibier, but then it came back together, and then on the final climb, race favorite Pogacar blew up, and Vingegaard went on to take a comfortable stage win and the lead. Yellow jersey in this year's edition of the Tour de France. But let's see what this next edition of PCM 23 should have in store for it, at least according to my opinion. Now, I'm going to give you my list of 10. At the end of this thing, I want you to drop down below in the comments. Be sure to hit that like button as well to get this algorithm push and get it out there and get it seen, especially by Cyanide, so that they can actually take some of this and implement it. But if there's enough likes and if there is enough comments regarding your lists, what you would like to see, what you agree with, and what different things you would like to see, I will make a second video based on the viewer content. All right, down to the list. Coming in at number 10, sprint maps. By sprint maps, I'm talking about the same sort of pop-up screen that you get for the climbs. As you go up the climbs, in fact, we should be seeing one here relatively soon here on this stage. As you get those pop-ups for the mountain overviews, I'd love to see, here it is now, Col du Galibier. The Galibier climb. You see how you get this profile, you know what you're in for on the climb. You have some data regarding it. I would love to see a two-dimensional, top-down view of sprints. Both the intermediates and the sprint finishes, so that you have an idea of what the run-in is without having to go in here and go to the map and have to then zoom in to see what the layout is like. The same sort of information can be provided right here at no cost to the player, and it's very useful. Coming in at number 9, more pre-race tactical options. Right now we have very limited sets of what it is you want your riders to do if you are going to use that quick simulation. You have a leader, you do have a few options, but there is way more reactional, or if rider X, Y, or Z does this, or if riders placed in the top 3 do this, I want to do that, or when to attack, where to attack, how to attack. There's a lot of possibilities in terms of additional when, where, how. And I'd love to see some additional pre-race tactical options added to the game. Moving forward to number 8, as we are approaching the top of the climb here on the Galibier the first time. I'd love to see a dynamic set and just generally more objectives in Pro Cyclist mode. Right now you have a very generic set of you work at the front, you ride in the break, or you finish at X position or better. And that's it. You get commands from teammates, but they don't mean anything. If you protect the rider who says, "I'm cold out here, protect me," you don't gain anything for it at all. You don't gain any XP, you don't get any favoritism from that rider, you don't gain any favoritism from your team manager. no matter what you do, it makes no difference. Those 3 objective sets are all we have. So I'd love to see something that is just more like those commands that you get actually amounting to something, like in terms of relationships, rider, or with the boss, on the fly changing within that stage, changing, and simply something that is more dynamic. You don't see it change much. You get a pre-race set of, we want you to finish on the podium for this race. Oh no, you blew up on stage 5 of a 21 stage race. Now you're in 21st. You're no longer in contention for a podium for that Grand Tour. Gosh, maybe we should change strategy and go for the King of the Mountains jersey. Where's that dynamic impact? I'd like to see that. On to number 7. Revamp the August signing period. I'm happy with the dossier setup and the 60 points and how it's spread out over months. And that leads to better positions for yourself in terms of negotiating the signing of riders. But then you're crazy as a player if you don't sign every single rider you're going to sign for the next season on August 1st or 2nd or 3rd. Why? Because there's no competition. You have a clear advantage over the rest of the field in that situation. What I would like to see is this, because it's a simple system. It's already similar to how the dossiers work. What I would like to see is beginning on August 1st, you get 10 points, not 60, 10. And then every day after that, you get 1 more point for 50 days. So you still get to your 60 points. So the system is entirely the same, except instead of being distributed all 60 points on August 1st, allowing you to cheat the system and sign all of your riders before everybody else, now you have to carefully, as Grossschartner goes in the attack, you have to carefully pick when you're going to sign riders, when you're going to spend those points. Save up. Do you go for all the guys that have the lowest point totals and risk losing your top targets? Or do you hold off? You don't sign anybody at all. Your top target is 16 points. You started with 10. You wait 6 days and then sign them. And then you have no points. And now you have to wait. And suddenly the other teams start to sign riders. So some of your options might go away. There's a lot more strategy involved. And yet, ultimately, the system is exactly the same because it's still a 60-point system. It's exactly like it is now. But now, you're actually competing in the market for others, making difficult choices on a day-to-day basis on when and how you want to attack. Kamna also in the attack here in this break. 5 chasing 5 as we are on the second climb of the day. Number 6. More nations in Worlds. With the expansion this year of the database, particularly amongst young riders, there should be more nations competing at the Worlds. Right now you have just the larger nations. Where's all those nations that have 4 or 3 riders in it, or 2 riders in it? I know that adds something, because the mods have already kind of played into this, where you have significantly more teams, and the more teams you have in the race, the more complicated it gets. So I know there's still a limit. It can't be fully realistic, but right now there is far too few teams at the World Championships. And where's the Pan Americans? I know it's not a popular race, but the Euros have now been in the game for a couple of years. We need the Pan Americans as well, because in my Pro Cyclist mode this year, instead of doing an American rider, which I am, and I always do an American rider for Pro Cyclist mode, I had to do a German rider. Why? Because I've never once had the opportunity to compete in the Euros in the 2 years so far, because American riders don't have a race to be in. So let's see those Pan Americans added in. You already have the platform, it's already there. The Euros already exist. Let's get those Pan Americans so we can bring other regions in. Let's make some sort of Asian race as well, even if it's not actually out there. Let's get the whole world competing regionally for their best of the region. Number 5, while it may not be popular to some, I think it's an absolute must in the face of equality, and that is women's cycling needs to be added in. The number of races, the platform's all there. You have everything you need. It just expands the database, and or there's an on-off switch at the start of the game. I preferably would love to manage a men's cycling team and a women's cycling team through the same sponsor at the same time. I think that would be the ultimate career mode. I would love to do that. But let's say that that's not year number 1. Let's say that that's something they add in eventually. Just simply having on or off, choosing men's cycling at the start or choosing women's cycling at the start and doing just the men's or women's peloton is a choice that every single player should have, whether you want it or not. Half the world's population is female, and there is plenty of women in sports. And while they don't generate the same revenue as men's, that is not just subjective. It is a system in place that devalues women in sports, that devalues what they bring. And it's not fair, and it's not right. Just as racism has no place, sexism should have no place in sport either, regardless of the sport. And every single sports game should have the female version in it. If you play it, you play it. If you don't, you don't. That is a choice, and that is your choice. But it should be an option for you. It should be available for you. More and more games are taking that challenge on and adding that in, but it's far from universal yet, and Pro Cycling Manager needs to add it in as well. Likewise, I'd like to see another mode. Number 4 on my list is Cyclo-cross. We're approaching the final climb here, so I really do need to speed up on things, though I suppose I could slow it down for the final climb. Just 47 riders left in the peloton as they just brought in the breakaway Gross Schartner. Vlasov still looking really good here for Team Bora Hansgrohe. Cyclo-cross is amazingly popular, especially with Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel coming over and making waves in road races. The popularity of Cyclo-cross has grown significantly, and if this is truly Pro Cycling Manager, where's the Pro Cyclo-cross? Because it is absolutely an aspect, and there's a lot of the same riders, and I think it would be a great addition to the game, even if it is a separate mode. However, I would love to see some sort of crossover between the men's and women's pelotons, some sort of crossover between road, track, and cyclo-cross, and not just as separate modes as the track mode is in game right now, a separate mode. I'd still take that initially, but I'd love to see that crossover eventually of managing a much larger system, much larger scheme of the cross disciplines. Would be really cool to manage all of that. Number 3, feed zones. The Tour de France title already has a feed zone system. A feed zone system that you use that feed up over the course of the race, and then you enter a feed zone and get a new gel. And then you have that for use again later on to restore energy. I would love to see that system that's already existing in the Tour de France title implemented in the Pro Cycling Manager title. Likewise, I would really like to see, because here, the feed zone, how it realistically should be, is from the team car. I would like to see interactions with the team car. Send riders back. The stage goes to Primoz Roglic, by the way. We're going to go ahead and move on now to number 2. This one rumored to be in the works, and I hope that it is coming. Rumor has it, though, that it's coming in PCM 24, not 23. I would, of course, prefer to see it in 23 sooner rather than later. We've been on the same engine, same match engine for years and years now. We're due for the upgraded engine. The Tour de France engine looks quite a bit better than the Pro Cycling Manager. Too much time and effort has gone into that title for a game that just does not work very well, is not well liked, does not sell well. This is the flagship title. Let's throw in a few honorable mentions before we get to number 1 on our list. Copy rider schedules, as in take your schedule that you've already established for a team leader, take a domestique, and just copy that schedule to them. Highlight sponsor objectives on the objectives tab. So we have the objectives section where you're planning things out and you're looking through all those races. I don't know which ones are the objectives from there. If they were highlighted, I would know what the important races are of the year, and the objectives are important to most players, most seasons. It would really help us quality of life improvement. And finally, inter-team relationships on course. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. There's Roglic on his way to that finish line, meaning if I work at the front for 10K over this next little stretch, later on in another stage, I'm helping out your rider this time. Later on in another stage, we're in a breakaway, and you have a guy who's going to do a little bit of work, and it's going to help set my guy up potentially for a stage win. So a little scratch my back, I scratch yours advancement. All right, on to number 1. Merge Pro Cycling Manager with the Tour de France game. I know that does cut into the revenue, but first off, to my knowledge from the research that I've been able to find, which is not much data, the Tour de France title does not sell well. You have 2 teams that have a lot of overlap. Every year, we hear the same message from Cyanide. We have a small team. We don't have the same numbers that SI have. We don't have the same numbers that EA has. We can only do so much. Why is a game that's failing every year? By the way, I really like a couple things about the Tour de France game. Merge the dev team, merge the title, take the improved match engine, use the Tour de France style gameplay to be an upgrade to the Pro Cyclist mode in PCM. You have that same concept, you have that same build, you have that same career flow, but now you get to use the gamepad and you get to control the rider firsthand. So all that work that's gone into Tour de France amounts to something. We get the improvement, we get that crossover, like I was saying, how I want to see the feed zones. You take that element from the Tour de France game. You now have more people to work on making a game that is far more popular, Pro Cycling Manager, that much better. They are essentially the same game that serve the same purpose. A lot of people, myself included, thought that it was the same game, that one was the console name and one was the PC name. It's not the case. It is 2 separate games, but there is a ton of overlap. By merging teams, if you're making a better game, myself and most of the audience probably willing to pay a little bit more. So if you're charging $5 or $10 or euros, pounds a year more for a better product with a team that's putting more time and effort into it to make the improvements, to fix the bugs, to introduce new concepts, if you're making the game better, we're willing to pay more for it. You make up for the revenue loss of losing one of the titles, even though it's not one that really makes you much money anyway. And you ultimately then develop a game that can rival the likes of the other large sports management titles. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I would love for you to drop down below, click that like button to help with the algorithm, but leave that comment. Let me know what of these 10 things, 13 if you count those honorable mentions, which of them you like the best, and what would your list be? What other things should be added to Pro Cycling Manager this year or beyond, this coming year or beyond? And again, if enough of you leave comments regarding that, I will make a second video with 5 or 10 more additional things to add to the list. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Thanks for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.